There's really three prevailing thoughts that I end up with, and obviously, this being a Mets show and a lot of Mets fans watching this, like we always are gonna go to the Mets perspective on all these
Mhm.
things. And the first prevailing thought, and I'm sorry to not talk about the Dodgers first, but that's just like the most devastating loss that I've ever seen a team suffer. And
Mhm.
I tried to go through all the other devastating playoff losses that I could think of. The best one I could come up with is the Rangers in 2011 blowing Game 6, blowing two-run leads in the ninth inning and the 10th inning in Game 6, and then losing in Game 7. And that was rough because they were an out away from winning the World Series, a strike away from winning the World Series twice in
And a
Game 6.
defensive substitution potentially away for
Whatever,
winning the
whatever
World
you want to say, he
Series.
strikes him
Yeah,
out. The defensive substitution doesn't
sure.
matter. But you're right. Like, if they put a better right fielder than Nelson Cruz in right field, then potentially the Rangers win the World Series. Neither of those games were at home, and neither of those games, like Game 7 wasn't close. And so when
Right.
you talk about the Blue Jays and all the different, like, if this one play goes differently, they win the World Series. And it starts in the ninth inning of Game 6. Barger's line drive getting stuck under the wall, and everybody in Canada saying, "We've never seen that." Like, that's not knowing the rule, because that doesn't happen at the Rogers Center. Jimenez with the line drive, old friend Andres Jimenez with the line drive that gets caught by Kike Hernandez. And then the underrated part of this, and obviously Miguel Rojas played a big role in Game 6 and Game 7, but Kike spikes the throw that gets by, a run scores, and then it's Barger goes to third base with two outs. So
Right.
who knows where they are. Um, then you go to last night. Like Bichette can't score on the base hit in the first inning because of, or this whichever inning it was, because it was the second inning. Bichette can't score, so they get bases loaded and nobody scores in the second inning off Otani. They eventually score the 3-run homer by Bichette, so he makes up for it. The line drive that Jimenez hits with a charging Muncy when they thought he was going to bunt, and it just lands in his glove. Then, of course, like the IKF thing where he pinch runs for Bichette, he gets to third base. I don't have as much of an issue with the lead that he didn't take because of what just happened the night before with Barger getting doubled off. And instead, it's more, why did you slide? Like, run through the base, you don't slow down, and you probably are a World Series champion today. And then the Clement fly ball that I still don't know how Andy Pott has caught that ball. That was destined for both of those, like him and Kike colliding into each other, and that inning, that leading to a World Series champion. And instead, that's a catch. And then you go to the 11th inning, and if Alejandro Kirk just hits a fly ball or hits a ground ball to the right side,
Right.
instead of a ground ball perfectly for a 6-6-3 to end it, we're at least in the 12th inning with a tie game. All of those things I would be replaying for the rest of my life if that was the Mets and that happened to them, and both of those games happened at home. And we're in a unique situation as Mets fans that most of the devastating losses in our franchise's history have happened at Citi Field or at Shea Stadium. So I empathize with my brothers to the north in Toronto. That is something you just don't get over, because your season ends on a special season too, and
Hmm.
there's no, like, oh, at least I'll get to say goodbye to them. No, it's just over. And that's just sometimes what happens with sports. It really sucks.
Yeah, I mean, the text message I sent you last night, the second the game ended, was if this happened to the Mets, you'd never hear from me ever again.
Mm-hmm.
The Mets have had some devastating losses. 2015 still sits in my chest sometimes. It's not even close to what the Blue Jays and their fans just went through. And yeah, I mean, there's 1,000 individual moments. You'll replay this screenshot of IKF and Will Smith at the plate would just burn in my brain for all time.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that his foot also comes off home plate and then back on it, and it's like within millimeter. I do think he was out, but there's also part of me that's like, even if he came off, like are they really going to decide the World Series on
Yeah,
play
I
that
need
close?
more
Probably
conclusive
not.
evidence than that, you know?
And even like you talk about the Pages catch, they only put Pages into center field because he had a better arm than Edman. There's no way Tommy Edman's making that catch, and I don't know if Kike's catching that over the shoulder the way he was running. That's a huge game-changing thing. Vlad swinging 3-0, I thought he got it on contact, and it looked like a walk-off home run, I think it was the 9th or the 10th
That was
inning.
bottom 9. Yeah, that was right after the Rojas home run to tie it.
And yeah, we didn't even talk about Miguel Rojas of all people. It's not like Ohtani or Freeman hit a home run. Like it in the moment, it felt like Rajay Davis in 2016, except Cleveland didn't actually win that World Series and it wound up kind of going into the dustpan. Whereas Miguel Rojas of all people, who was only in the game because, again, Pages had been so bad that they said, okay, Edman, you're going in center field and we're just going to play Marlins stalwart Miguel Rojas at second base, and he gets the biggest hit of his entire life. There's just so many different things, and it's devastating. It's like I felt so bad for them immediately in the moment because I just empathize too much with that kind of thing, and I don't know how you get over that unless you go back and win, and that's a really tough thing to do unless you're
Yeah.
the Dodgers.
A lot broke right for them, and they got the nickname of the comeback kids, the Blue Jays. And part of that is just I personally like counted them out so many different times throughout the pennant race, like the division race. I thought the Yankees were going to overtake them, especially that last week of the season, and they had to win 5 straight to hold on to a tie for the division that they eventually won the tiebreaker for. When the Yankees won Game 3, I thought the Blue Jays were kind of dead. I thought they woke up a sleeping giant, and then they won Game 4 at the stadium. And then obviously down 2-0 in the NLCS after losing the first 2 at home, and then down 3-2, down 3-1 in the 8th inning in the 8th inning.
Yeah.
8th inning or 7th inning?
It was the 8th inning when Springer hit the home run.
Okay. Are we sure it wasn't the 7th inning? I'm now lost.
Pretty sure, but these games, there's been so many of these games.
Longest World Series of all time, too. So we're all kind of baseball. These innings run together.
Literally.
Regardless, down late in Game 7 at home against the Mariners, and they come back and win. Down 2-1 after a devastating 18-inning loss in Game 3 after the Ohtani show happens in the World Series. And then, like, after losing Game 6 the way they do, they have a lead, and it's like every single time I think the Blue Jays are gonna roll over and die, they come back and win. And for the way this season ends to be a Dodger comeback and win, where the Jeff Hoffman 92% chance to win, probability on the charts for the Dodgers to lose, at least. I would never. I would be so long before I watch baseball again. And I know you mentioned the 2015 World Series. Imagine if the way they lost Game 4 and 5 was Game 6 and 7 with the Mets having a 3-2 lead in the series. That's honestly the only equivalent we have to what it could be. So yeah, I empathize with Dodger fans. The second thing is the Dodger angle of this. I said I empathize with Dodger fans. I empathize with Blue Jays fans. I don't really care about Dodger fans today.
No.
Congrats. The Dodger angle of this. 2 stats for you. So 87 qualified hitters in the playoffs. 87 different qualified postseason batters. The Dodgers had 1 player in the top 25 in OPS, and it was Ohtani. The next closest was 26 and 27. Teoscar Hernandez and Will Smith. Everybody else just didn't hit in the postseason. They really won this World Series on the back of Ohtani and a starting pitching staff that with the best money could buy between Yamamoto and Snell and Glasnow and Ohtani. It kind of, and this is where we also have to go to the Mets angle. We're eventually going to talk about how much pitching the Mets are going to need to pretend they're a World Series contender next year. And this really showed that people can talk about the offense, and I'm sure we'll talk about the offense at some point, but they just won the World Series with really one hitter being consistently great from a value standpoint. And then the other stat is that they finished with a 233 collective average, which is the 100th best of all the World Series winners of the modern era. Now, to
Wow.
be clear, it's the same batting average as the 2016 Cubs, the 2022 Astros, who went through offensive funks throughout their World Series runs. But if you remember, those teams had some great pitching too. So it just goes to the old modicum that pitching wins championships, was just highlights. What Yamamoto did just gets a gigantic
It's
WTF for me,
insane.
Rich. Like, were you watching baseball in 2001?
Not really.
So you don't remember Randy Johnson coming in the ninth inning of Game 7? So Randy
No.
Johnson throws a complete game in Game 6 for the Diamondbacks. They go down 3-2 in Game 7 to the Yankees, and he comes in the eighth inning, throws 17 pitches, gets 4 batters out. It was looked at as like a great effort, but it wasn't looked at as this great feat that he did. It was just looked at as like Randy Johnson came in and got four batters. There was no leverage to it.
Mhm.
What Yamamoto did last night, getting the final 8 outs of the game, coming in and getting out of the jam in the ninth inning, getting out of the jam in the 11th inning, the night after he threw 7 scoreless or 7 innings of 1-run ball. It's one of the more impressive things I've ever seen
In this era of
yeah.
baseball,
Yes, in
especially.
this era of
Like,
baseball, for sure.
It's a 0 day. When I saw him warming up, I was at a Halloween party. We were all like had our hands on our heads, like, he's warming up. What are you talking about? And then he comes in and yeah, he did get lucky in the ninth, but after that, he really just shut it down. And it's amazing. You go back to the Mets really tried to get him, and now you kind of know why. There was not much they could do a couple off seasons ago, because I think Martino had posted it on Sunday right after the World Series that like the second that the Dodgers were in on him, like he was never coming to the Mets or the Yankees. He wanted to go to the West Coast. So they couldn't really top those offers. So, it's like one of the first thoughts that I had, of course, like you said, we're Mets fans, so we always bring it back to the Mets. And it was just like, man, what would I feel if the Mets lost this World Series? And damn, I wish Yoshinobu Yamamoto was on the Mets right now. But yeah, one of the most impressive things I've ever seen. And honestly, I was not rooting for the Dodgers to win. I think it would have been more fun and more interesting for the Blue Jays to do it. My hot take, and I don't know how hot of a take this is it might be like 2% better for the Mets that the Dodgers don't come into an offseason coming off of a loss where they'd be angrily spending. Doesn't mean they're not going to spend. They might still get like a Kyle Tucker or something like that. But I don't know. I do think that there's a little bit something to the Dodgers might not go as hog wild because they've won back-to-back versus had they lost in like pretty embarrassing fashion.
Yeah, I'd rather the Dodgers. Now they might still go hog wild anyway because of the Dodgers, but I'd rather them be just be coming off a championship. Now, it also hopefully them being high spenders. I did not need the narrative out there that you don't need to spend to win a World Series, and especially in an off season where I really hope the Mets spend some money. Including the fact that I don't know that there's going to be a 2027 baseball season.